Hey everyone, and welcome to this urgent explainer. We've got a highly complex, incredibly fast-moving geopolitical crisis on our hands right now, with reports of widespread destruction, cross-border retaliation, and some really intense maritime standoffs. We're taking a strict, impartial look at this massive new military escalation between the United States and Iran. Our goal today? To cut through the noise and get straight to the facts. 9. Yep, you heard that right. 9. That is the number of consecutive nights the United States has carried out airstrikes against Iran. For 9 straight nights, this region has just been subjected to intense bombardments. We're not talking about some isolated skirmish here. This is a sustained military campaign that is fundamentally altering the Middle East. All right, let's get into part 1, the 9th consecutive night, and the sheer scale of this bombardment. To really grasp the magnitude of what's happening, you have to look at the geographic scale. These strikes are expansive. We're talking about southern port cities right near the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, places like Jask and Sirik, which have been hit frequently. But crucially, explosions have now been heard way up in Tabriz, a major city in the far northwest. That's a huge deal because it's the very first time it's come under attack in this specific escalation. Add in the fact that air defense systems are active in southeastern cities like Chabahar, and you realize the footprint of this campaign is just massive. So what does this all mean on a geopolitical level? Well, that month-old ceasefire agreement, it's completely collapsed. That brief pause in hostilities has completely unraveled, plunging the region right back into a highly volatile phase of active combat and basically erasing any of the recent diplomatic progress we saw. Moving on to part 2, catalysts for the escalation. What actually broke the peace? You're probably wondering, how did we get back here so quickly? Well, the origins of this wider conflict trace back to that February 28th U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran, which was followed by that really fragile month-long ceasefire. But the immediate catalyst, the thing that sent that ceasefire into an absolute tailspin, was the recent deaths of 3 U.S. military personnel. These casualties in Jordan and Iraq, including a service member killed when an Iranian drone detonated, served as the critical flashpoint for what we're seeing right now. To understand the American response impartially, we have to look directly at what the commander-in-chief is saying. Speaking to reporters in Washington, D.C., actually right after returning from the World Cup final, U.S. President Donald Trump said, "We hit them very hard again tonight, and we did that in honor of the 3 great patriots." He also emphasized that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, laying out the stated U.S. justification for the severity of these current strikes. On the flip side, you have these fierce retaliatory warnings coming straight out of Tehran. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, declared, and I quote, "This passage is unsafe for the transport of chemical fertilizer or even a single drop of oil and gas." They're referring to vital maritime corridors here, basically warning that as long as U.S. operations continue, those waters are a no-go zone. This stark rhetoric on both sides really highlights a total, fundamental breakdown of mutual trust. That brings us to part 3, retaliation in Jordan and Kuwait. Because this rhetoric isn't just talk anymore, it is manifested into a violent military tit-for-tat that is rapidly spilling across borders. The U.S. military says its goal is to degrade Iranian capabilities, specifically targeting military command centers, coastal surveillance sites, and drone launch facilities. In swift retaliation, the IRGC claims they've launched a wave of missiles and drones at U.S. assets across the wider region. We're talking strikes on U.S. aircraft at Jordan's Aqaba Airport and hits on U.S. military facilities at the Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait. State media in Iran even reported air raid sirens going off in Bahrain. The scope of this exchange is widening incredibly fast. All right, let's jump to part 4, the major flashpoint, the Strait of Hormuz. So much of this military action is fundamentally a fight for control over this absolutely vital waterway. Washington states it's actively enforcing a naval blockade on Iranian ports. U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, said they've already redirected 6 commercial vessels and completely disabled another ship, all in the name of ensuring full compliance. It's a highly aggressive maritime strategy specifically designed to squeeze Iranian logistics. Now, in response to that blockade, Tehran's narrative is that it's targeting vessels that violate its own rules for navigating the straits. In fact, the IRGC reported that 2 oil tankers exploded while trying to transit an unsafe corridor. Crucially, they are claiming these ships were attempting the transit under U.S. coercion. So you have 2 directly opposing narratives here, and it's creating a terrifyingly dangerous environment for commercial shipping. Right in the middle of this maritime crisis, the U.S. is turning to the international community for backup. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio noted that while Washington is open to diplomacy, though he stressed it has to be real, he's urgently asking allies to step up with either hardware or finances to help protect regional shipping in the Strait. Basically, the U.S. is actively seeking international backing to sustain this blockade. Which leads us to part 5, the global stakes and repercussions. Zoom out with me for a second, because this localized escalation is generating massive global fallout. On the ground, the human cost is absolutely devastating. Since this wider conflict really kicked off in February, thousands have been killed, mostly in Iran and Lebanon, and critical infrastructure has just been leveled. But the shockwaves, they extend way beyond the Middle East. Because the Strait of Hormuz is such a primary artery for oil, this standoff has caused serious disruptions to global energy supplies, and that is sending fears of inflation spiking all over the world. We're literally watching a conflict in one specific region threaten the economic stability of the entire globe. So we are left looking at a really grim picture. With thousands dead on the ground and global energy supplies heavily threatened by this naval standoff, a huge question remains. What will it actually take to restore the ceasefire? Will diplomacy find a real foothold, or are we witnessing the volatile new normal for the Middle East? It's a high-stakes geopolitical situation that is literally unfolding by the hour. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. Stay informed out there, and we'll see you next time as we continue to bring you the facts.